Hey there and welcome back to another Disney video. And just the other day, we saw the release of the latest trailer for the upcoming live-action adaptation of Walt Disney's Pinocchio. And yeah, I'll just come out and say on a visual level, this thing looks very interesting. Looks really good, well constructed and faithful to the original film, whilst also bringing a newer element to the table via the live action. So it's both familiar and nostalgic in appearance, whilst also kind of setting itself apart, but only slightly. Because a lot of this trailer really does look almost shot for shot at times. And I rewatched the original very recently, and it very much looks the same. So I'm in two minds about the film. On one hand, it really does have the potential to be truly amazing. Regardless of any of the other factors, it's clearly going to be a visual masterpiece, and it looks very beautiful. But where I think we're at a major risk is the story itself. Because like it or not, we are in an era where these sort of remakes are among the most controversial films released every single year. When they first started with Alice in Wonderland, they were unique and interesting, new and fresh, a different way of telling a classic story. But over time, Disney thought, well, let's just keep making them again and again and again, and started working through their entire back catalogue. And they've done so many at this point that they've almost become oversaturated. And this oversaturation really started to dry up people's goodwill and interest towards the films in general. And so, whilst I think I will probably enjoy this film simply because it looks great and I enjoyed the original quite a lot, I don't expect it to do very well with audiences whatsoever. The disdain for these films has really just permeated the collective consciousness of moviegoers, or at least the portion that are the most vocal. I mean, Jesus, I took a look at the like to dislike ratio on the trailers that have released so far, and whoof, those are some pretty troubling signs. And I think Disney's even started making some of these just streaming exclusives because the box office was starting to dry up for them. And I'm pretty sure it was Dumbo that started that trend. It did well below expectations. Plus, people were starting to complain that they already had so many films releasing in cinemas already. And it didn't make sense to compete with themselves. And so, here they are. Streaming online exclusives. But yeah, general thoughts, visuals are great, and the story will probably be almost completely derivative with no additions or changes. And I think the acting's probably going to end up seeming a little bit hokey as well. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here telling you I expect an Oscar-winning film, but simply a fun time chock full of nostalgia, and I think that's what it's going to be. But with all that being said, let's just take a little bit of a closer look at the trailer. So we start off the trailer with a bit of narration by the character Stromboli, who was a bit of a caricature in the original. And honestly, to me, he seemed like he was meant to be a bit of a racial stereotype, and I'm pretty sure he's described in that film with a word that I'm quite confident is now considered a slur. But either way, it didn't seem like a positive portrayal. Here, I mean, he's still not a positive portrayal, but he seems a bit less over the top, less of a caricature. But I guess time's going to tell whether they retained those elements that seemed more racially charged from the original. I reckon instead he'll just be an ugly Italian dude in this version. Probably less over the top, less of a caricature, and more of a real character, whilst also still keeping it true to what we know from the original. But anyway, as he introduces Pinocchio, we see a lot of different clips playing over the top. We see the Pinocchio puppet sitting alone in the dark in the workshop. And for one, the puppet itself looks incredible, and I don't know why, but I figured they wouldn't be able to properly make a design that both looked like the famous animation, whilst also looking like it could actually exist in real life. And I think for the most part they've done this. I do like the more fantastical look, and there have been some more realistic designs for wooden puppet Pinocchios in various different films, but for the Disney adaptation, I like that they kept it more happy storybook as opposed to creepy wooden puppet. Also, the workshop feels like it jumped right out of the 1940s film. And I get that some people are not going to like that because it feels derivative, and that's one of the big complaints that people have. After all, if you don't have something new to show and new to say, then what's the point? But honestly, maybe I'm just very easy to please, and yeah, I probably am. But these early shots in the trailer, the workshop in the dark with Puppet Pinocchio sitting there, vagrant Jiminy walking through the town towards the workshop, Geppetto working on the puppet and then walking him around as if he was alive, down to Stromboli introducing the act and the blue fairy bringing Pinocchio to life, it just all oozes nostalgia. And though some things are obviously slightly altered, it almost does completely look like a one-to-one adaptation. I think the only thing I didn't like is Jiminy Cricket. Dude looks fake as, and I know, yeah, what a ridiculous complaint. But every other living animal in this trailer looks, well, they look close enough to being real. Except for the fish. The fish is freaky. But anyway, he looks very stylized, and it just felt a bit inconsistent to me. Also, I really like the look of the blue fairy as well, and I'm sure that's going to have some complaints, because of course it will. But I think she looks adequately mysterious and mystical, and that's all you really need. It's not like the character's in that many scenes anyway, so who cares? We then get a look at Pinocchio as he actually comes alive, and despite what I said earlier about him looking good, here he is adequately uncanny valley, which, yeah, I guess a living puppet would have that unsettling feeling, but it definitely works better as an animation as opposed to seeing it in live action. Like, I don't hate it, but at the same time, it makes me feel weird. Like, there's something wrong here. Also, Tom Hanks chucking the cat is funny, but from what I've seen of his performance across the trailers, he's very, very over the top, and I don't know. I don't really like it all that much. From the get-go, the voice and the acting, they've not really been all that well received with me. He's a great actor, but I'm worried this one's going to be a miss. Same with the voice for Jiminy. It just feels like a discount version of the original. I know they wanted to keep it true to the original a bit more, but here I think they really should have blazed a new trail, gone in an alternate direction with the voice. They had to get out of the shadow of it, and they haven't succeeded with that. Also, I hate the fish. The fish freaks me out. The face, I don't like the face. Ugh. Like, it's so cute in the animation, but if you CGI that thing, suddenly it's like a freaky alien. Not a fan. And then we get a look at yet another iconic scene from the original, brought to live action. And they're really just going all out on the nostalgia right now. I know I'll love it regardless, as I've said, but I think they're shooting themselves in the foot and are seeming like they're just basically making the exact same film with hardly any real differences besides the visual stuff. Like, it looks great and it tugs on your nostalgia, but that's all they're showing. But then on the other hand, adding new stuff always comes with a bit of a risk. If you add something to a classic and the addition actively makes things worse, then you end up looking like an idiot. So I'm very worried about Sophia the seagull. Jiminy's role in the original was already pretty perfectly done. Does he need a wisecracking seagull friend? I honestly don't know, but I can't help but be a little bit concerned about it. And thus, it's that catch-22 coming back into play, which really shows how making one of these films carries such an immense risk. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Either you keep things the same and have people complain that you're making a pointless movie, or you add things and you run the risk of them making the films actively worse and thus making you look like a fool for thinking that deviating from the set formula was ever a good idea. We then see Pinocchio being a bit of a peeping Tom as he looks in on one of the puppeteers who's practicing her dancing in her room at night in private. Jesus, Jiminy Cricket's gonna have his work cut out for him with this kid. We then get a look at Honest John and Gideon the cat, and whilst the CGI for the other animal creatures hasn't always been the best in my opinion, these two characters look incredible. I really love the voice acting for him as well. We then have a brief look at Pinocchio's life at the puppet show, doing the show, interacting with the puppeteer who's clearly going to be a new character for him to bond with and learn from, before he gets launched into a cage by Stromboli as we cut back to Geppetto, who's panicking as he should have made it home by this point. And here we get a look at Figaro the cat up close. And once again, I don't know what it is about him. He's cute, but a little bit off. I can't quite put my finger on it, but he just doesn't look quite right. And so off Geppetto goes looking for his son, whilst Jiminy tries to get his attention but fails because he's trapped inside a glass jar. Does the seagull do this to him? Try to eat him maybe? Does Pinocchio, the fox, is he hiding from the rain? Also, I did enjoy that for some reason Geppetto takes his fishbowl with him into the storm to try and find Pinocchio, as if the fish is going to be able to guide him to his lost son. And also, wouldn't the water be overflowing with all the rain? Fish is going to get washed away. And then he loses two beloved family members. But I think where the film is going to set itself apart from the original most prominently is the Pleasure Island scenes. They look awesome, even more grand and more fantastical than the original. Really setting up that sense of wonder and amazement for when it all goes to shit and the kids become donkey slaves to work at circuses and salt mines. And I really hope they don't change that ending. It's dark and it's bleak and it's unexpected, but it shows that Pinocchio can't save everybody from their bad decisions, because ultimately the story's about him and his bad decisions, and he needs to solve them. Then there's a big montage to When You Wish Upon a Star, and this cover is fire, I love it. And then we get a bunch of different scenes, mostly, once again, back to that nostalgic factor. Shots that I can remember directly from the original, and they just play up that hype. And all of it looks good, but, it's not very creative. But moving on, I want to talk about Monstro, and I don't know what it is, I just didn't get that fear factor when I watched him. When you see the original, Monstro is freaky. He's frightening. And even now as an adult, I was like, wait, what? They put this shit in a kid's movie? I just didn't think he translated very well to a live action format, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I don't know whether a whale in that design just isn't scary enough, or if the concept of a giant whale just doesn't work in live action and seems more hokey, but I just found myself looking at him and thinking, oh, is that it? Like, Monstro is such an iconic part of the original film. So I really hope they do manage to do him justice, but just based on what I've seen in this trailer, it seems unlikely. And so yeah, that's all I really have to say about the trailer. I came into it hyped, and I still am hyped, but I don't expect it to be well received at all. And already based on this trailer, I can see a lot of elements that even I, a Disney live action apologist, can see are not going to work out so well. But as always, these are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think? Do you like the trailer? Maybe not. You hyped? Maybe not. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.